Rotunda in the West, conversations with creative Australians. And tonight, of course, Helen Garner. Helen Garner is an award-winning journalist, a short story writer, a screenwriter, author of Monkey Grip, Joe Cinque's Consolation, The Spare Room, and I could go on and on and on, but I won't. Tonight in conversation with me, because I get to choose the most talented people around, and I go, that's my night. Helen, it's a lovely honour to have you back, and when I planned this with you, I didn't know it was going to be our 60th, but I'm so pleased that it's kind of lobbed on that. Could you please welcome the inimitable Helen Garner?
Thank you.
It's a Rotunda custom that you turn around, face someone you don't know and shake hands and tell them your favourite Helen Garner book. Could you turn around, shake hands with someone you don't know and tell them what your favourite Helen Garner is? And shame on you if you haven't read any Helen Garner. Welcome back again. I know you'd like to chat forever. It's lovely to meet strangers and actually say hello. Next time you get on the train, you should try that and say, I learnt that at Rotunda. The Bruno Lettieri, that little guru, was the man with his red batik shirt. Thank you for wearing red. We've got a film crew here tonight from Deakin University. How good is that? Yeah? Ecumenicalism, or whatever the word is. And of course, the road crew, Drew and Wes, who are here for every kind of function we do. The people at the bar who set the whole thing up. I just love working with these kind of people, and they are generous to me. And a lot of them do it for nothing too. It's all voluntary labour. Wisława Szymborska, the Polish poet, said, dense and intricate is the embroidery of circumstance. And I love that line, and I don't even know that I fully understand, but I think I do. And it means Helen can only be here tonight because we've done 59 other shows, and I might be getting a little bit better at this because I've done a lot of practice. And I just like the idea that there's this kind of build-up and things just don't happen kind of automatically, and there is some kind of building and some purpose behind it all. I think I met Helen Garner when I was teaching at the old Sunbury kind of campus there. It was the Sunbury VU, and I think Helen was the first woman writer that I had the audacity to kind of write to and say, listen, I run this little creative writing course, would you come out and teach? And she did, and it was a great night because, do you remember, Helen?
I remember all sorts of things about
that
going
first
out there,
night.
but I don't know what you're thinking of.
Okay. In the audience that night, there were students that you'd actually taught as a high school teacher. Remember that? And you actually remembered some of their names. And this was...
Oh, well, I was going to make a very grand claim then. But it is amazing to me how someone you've once taught can turn up 30 years later and you look at her and you go, my God, it's Bruno.
And and they welcomed you that night, and you were very moved by it. And they had some photographs of some of the schools you taught in the northern suburbs too.
No, I remember.
And you love some of the shoes that you were apparently wearing. You've got quite a shoe fetish,
I was wearing
believe.
in the photos.
Right? In the photos.
I used to have shoe fetish.
I'm happy to buy you some shoes at some stage if you ever want to go shopping too.
My feet hurt.
I was particularly taken by the fact that, one, you remember their name, 35 years on, and to one of them you actually said you wrote a particular piece and you'd remembered the story.
Well, that would be Helen Hokkanen.
Yeah, I think it was.
From Finland.
Well, whatever. And they were I don't remember, but you certainly do.
I do, vividly. She had white blonde hair, how could you forget?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we made this documentary with one of the other ladies too that you'd seen too. Helen, I can write to some of the great writers, and I dare to do that because I know that when I bring them here, I reckon they've got the best audience in town. And in 2008, you said this of the Rotunda audience: the Rotunda readings are a wonderful secret of Melbourne's West. Every time I'm invited to join in, I'm astonished all over again by the warmth and the vitality of the crowd that turns up. That's you. A solid core of faithful writers and readers that seems to draw in an ever-expanding audience. I heartily endorse and praise Rotunda. And your mate James Button, who's actually been up on this stage as well, and I think my microphone is drooping. Is that better? Yeah? Did I lose you all there?
Yeah.
Brooke, could you hear me then? If I lose you, you just signal or something like that. James Button, about 5 years ago, said this: we hear often about the death of the book and the written word. Goodbye Gutenberg and all that. but at any Rotunda event I go to leaves me with renewed faith that the printed page is alive and kicking. The brainchild of Bruno Lettieri and Susanna Bryson, Rotunda's helped to create a large, engaged, passionate community of readers and listeners in the western suburbs. I always leave feeling recharged. Here is a group of people that reads and thinks and feels and connects. I think that's a wonderful tribute to you. Give yourselves a round of applause, would you? Helen Garner, we're going to start with something very frivolous because it's nerve-wracking being up here, isn't it? I know you've done these things a lot of times.
It's always nerve-wracking.
It is nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
And people say you look so relaxed, Bruno, but I do feel it intensely.
You don't look relaxed. You're jumping around like a little...
I'm going to sit back and be very relaxed, Helen. You like the way I've crossed my legs?
Yeah, that's really cool, just like on TV.
Now I'm going to sit on the edge of my chair again. Okay, here is the 1 minute interview. Helen, you're just meant to give me the most insane, spontaneous answers. Here we go, Helen. 60 seconds, no equivocation, no delay. Your favourite film?
Godfather Part 2.
The most irresistible dessert you've ever eaten?
Dessert? Oh, some little chocolate things my granddaughter made the other night.
Your 3 favourite words in the English language?
Once upon a time.
3 novels that you take to a deserted island?
Oh, God, I hate thinking about desert islands. Wait. I'd probably take... well, you'd have to take something long. Wait, I've only got 60 seconds.
That's okay.
OK, Marcel Proust, Remembrance of Things Past.
I haven't read that. I better do that. That's only 1, 2 more.
There's 20 volumes.
Oh. Okay. How ignorant am I? Thank you for
No, it's
showing
all
me
in
up.
one book.
Now I'm going to sit on the edge of my chair.
No, I don't. I can probably take Moby Dick, and I'm trying to find a third one. The Fortunes of Richard Marnie.
Okay.
Get an Australian one in there.
Great. And if one of your books had to be put into a time capsule and you had to choose, and you only had about 10 seconds to choose, which one would you put in?
The Children's Bark.
If you could sing like any other known singer, who would you sing like?
Maria Callas.
The most memorable line from a film?
Play it again, Sam. I don't even... that just
everyone
came to mind.
pretends they know
pathetic.
that, don't they? That's okay.
Casablanca, right?
You're not pathetic in my eyes. So the public figure you most admire?
Ooh, no, I need more than 60 seconds for that one.
Okay, we can come back to that.
Yeah, okay.
I'm a bit trepidatious about asking you this one. 3 tips for a long relationship.
Hey, don't be ridiculous. I am so not the
You've
right
been
person
married
to...
3 times.
Yeah,
I've
but
been married.
they were 3.
That's 2 each, I reckon, if we average it out. So.
No, I got no tips. No, and I haven't got a single tip.
No? Would you like to marry me? Maybe go for 4.
Well, if I was young, I might contemplate it. I'm old now, past it.
Oh, you're not. We're going to get onto that later. The art form you'd select for yourself in your next life?
The art form?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd like to be a musician.
Musician. And what is the thing that you would like an audience to have? What quality do you love in an audience that you're speaking to?
Oh, a bit of eye contact. It's really nice. Yeah.
Could you please thank Helen Garner for subjecting herself to that little bit of nonsense? Helen, you came about 2008, and I think the time that you came here, you were feeling a bit crook, and I think you wrote in an email that you're almost going to kind of ring and say, like, I can't make it. And you did send me an email later, and am I allowed to use something personal?
Yeah, go ahead.
And you said, I was so glad I didn't pike out with my stupid, and you spelled it STCHOOPID. You're welcome to come to one of my literacy classes anytime. With my stupid bronchitis or wherever it was, I loved the evening at the tonic bar, the VU bar, and came home feeling I'd been surrounded by whatever force and response it was that I'd needed. It was such a marvellous audience. Can we talk about audience and not just your readership, but an audience that you come to and speak to, and that the effect that they can have on you, the encouragement they give to keep going in this solitary art form?
Well, once again, eye contact. It sounds an odd thing to say, but I notice that when I'm in an audience myself, I always want to sit right up the front. And I think I realise, actually, it's only just dawned on me this minute that that's probably because I'm dying to get eye contact with the person who's talking. And so when I used to go to church a lot, I used to sit right in the front row and really beam my attention onto the vicar. I don't know if he enjoyed this or not, but I find this... yeah, I don't mean that everyone has to look me in the eye the whole time so you can relax, but
Intense focus, please.
Yeah, well, I guess focus is... well, you don't want to think you're being a bore, and you also... Well, I always want to feel that I've made some kind of emotional contact with the people in the room. That's why I... when you asked me if it was okay for people to video the gig tonight, I thought, yeah. Because... It's sometimes, especially these days when everybody's tweeting and on whatever it is they're doing on their phones, and you think, well, couldn't you just be here just for an hour and not have to include the whole rest of the world? The intimacy, that's what I'm toiling towards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you found that in the audiences you've met at the times you've come to this place?
Very much, yeah. People are so... there's a kind of openness here that's really precious, I think.
Are we losing that kind of openness in public discussion, in public life, because of technology and because of the way we talk to each other publicly?
What we're losing seems to be intimacy between two people. Well, you said something a moment ago about talking to people on public transport, and that's one of the best things about getting old is that I am not scared to engage any stranger in conversation, and I, you can sort of play the role of the batty old duck, and it's no one ever thinks you want to marry them or sleep with them or anything. You're just there and you say, did I have really long, interesting conversations with strangers now, and I find them so wonderful. That what you can actually get to talk about with a stranger.
So do you deliberately get on trains a lot to do that? No, I'm not being flippant there.
No.
Because a lot of your stories seem to be on trains.
They used to be when I was... when I had a column in The Age, those ones you're thinking of?
Yeah, and even your most recent diary extracts that were in there. Remember those hooligans who were throwing beer or something? And you kind of pulled out
I took it right up to them, Bruno.
You did, didn't you?
I said... We don't want to hear dirty talk like that. Get up the other end of the carriage. And it's going, They're these horrible thugs who were boozing and drinking. I couldn't believe I said it. But they moved. They moved to the other end.
Tell us about the kind of courage that needs to do that, because I've often wondered if I were on a train and something was happening.
But you're a man. See, that's the difference. Okay. When you're an old lady...
Is that right?
There's a privilege thing. There were two other people near me in the carriage. One was a tiny little slender... delicate-looking Asian girl, a student, who was sitting very quietly and looking like she wanted to disappear because it was scary. And the other was a young boy who had his bike with him. And he too was carefully not making eye contact with these total thugs. They were just cursing and swearing. And were you scared at that moment? No, I wasn't scared. I was so angry. I thought, how dare you? I wanted to say, who do you think you are talking like that in this place where we're just going about our business? Why don't you just shut the fuck up, is what I really wanted to say. I didn't use any rude words because I thought that would, be a red rag to a bull. Sure. But, no, I was angry. And when you're angry, you're not so scared, I find. And that moment, that excerpt in the diary ends with the guy wheeling his bike and making some kind of contact with you to say, I was kind of looking out for you, madam, too. No, he didn't say anything. No, actually, I've got to say, there was the literary point in this story, which was that when this happened, I was reading the Times literary supplement. And, I was sitting there primly reading my kind of intellectuals magazine, and these thugs are drinking and yelling and cursing. And so I said, why don't you just shut up? We don't want to hear this sort of talk. Just shut up. And they were totally shocked, and they kind of went quiet for a minute, and then they started to mumble and groan and try to get their manhood back. And then as they walked to go up to the other end of the carriage, one of them put his head between me and my trembling TLS and said, "What you don't understand is that things have changed." So I didn't say anything. I just gave him a dirty look, and away he went. But anyway, the boy with the bike, he was a shy-looking teenage boy, a delicate creature, and he was going to get off the train at Spencer Street, and he wheeled his bike. He came up to me and he said, "Excuse me, can you tell me which is the right exit to get a bike out of the station?" And I said, "Oh yes, certainly. You just go down to the end of the platform." You know, I acted like I owned the railway system, but I realised afterwards that he could have figured that out for himself. He was really trying to say to me, you know, I support you even though I couldn't do anything and it was too scary. And it would have been suicidal for him to have done anything because they were a nasty pair of brutes.
Yeah. I remember Martin Flanagan, the journalist that I first invited to, would often travel by trains, and he loved the trains, and a lot of his journalism just came from the way he saw the city along those train lines and that. I just thought that was such a wonderful but simple way of kind of... and I sort of got that impression that for you as a writer, it's still important to get out in the world there and look at it and engage with it.
But trains are particularly good. They're different from trams because trams are more exposed to the street, and trains are kind of like a little private world that goes along. And
they go along the back fences, don't they?
Yeah, you see the back of things. But also in the train, it's a more intimate space than any other form of public transport. I've never lived in, until I came to live in Flemington, I never lived in a place where it was convenient or sort of made sense for me to take trains. So when I started taking trains, I mean, you know, I'm on the Broadie line and all the world is there on the Broadie, well, now the Craigieburn line. And I've had some wonderful experiences on trains of laughter and fear and...
What's the most poignant experience that you can remember of recently on a train that...
Oh, well...
That you went home and thought, I'm getting my pen out, I'm going to... This is going into my diary.
I can tell you that. What happened was, it was after Jill Maher was murdered up in Brunswick, and I'd been in a bar with a friend in the city just talking and laughing, and we got talking about Jill Maher and the horror of it, and... when I went to go home, I went down to Parliament Station and I was just sitting on the platform waiting for the train to pull in, and there was a young man sitting near me. This was like, 8 o'clock at night, not scary time or anything, but he was a young man, and he was looking at something on his phone, and I was just sitting there quietly, and all of a sudden he just started to sidle towards me along the seat on the platform, and he was holding his phone out, and I thought, oh God, what's this? And he came close to me and he said, "Excuse me, my wife's just given birth to our first child. Could I share the photos with you?" And I said, oh, you know, I just about burst into tears because I'd been sitting there thinking about Jill Maher and murder and rape and horror, and suddenly from heaven drops this adorable Turkish guy. And he showed me the photos, and you know, we were both almost in tears. And I said, "Well, where are you going?" And he said, "Oh, well, what happened was," he said, "I was at work and my wife went into labour and she called an ambulance. And the ambulance driver called me up at work and he said, 'You better get your ass out to the corner of Camp Road and the highway,' he said, 'because your wife's giving birth in the back of the ambulance and we're stopped at the corner.' So he said, I floored it from Glenroy. He said, I rushed up to open the back of the ambulance just as the baby was crowning." And so he was just overjoyed. And anyway, he said, so I rode to the hospital in the ambulance and I had to leave my car out in Broadie. So I'm just going out to collect my car. And that's what he was. I was thinking, basically, how come you're not still at the hospital? But he had to go and get his car.
So, Helen, at the moment that you're in this really emotional moment with this man, and it's an exquisite privilege to be shown that kind of thing, and I can still see the kind of welling up as you kind of tell the story. Yeah. Are you going... This is a story. I'm going to go home. This is going to just fall onto the page.
No, I'm right in the middle of it. No, because we're both in it. Well, we both got on the same train.
Sure.
And as we went along, we just got talking, and he told me about his family and how they migrated and all the rest of it. And then we said goodbye. And when we said goodbye, we kissed goodbye. You know,
really?
We sort of shook hands and kissed on both cheeks, and I got off at my stop and away he went. But anyway, there's the postscript to this story, which is, when I get home, I just thought, this gorgeous thing just happened to me. And I started thinking, I'll just write it in my diary. So I'm writing it in my thing. Hey, I could write this into a story. So then I made it into a story. And I submitted to the monthly magazine.
Yes.
So they run the story.
I've got it right here.
Yeah, fantastic. But get this. The next thing that happens is the monthly magazine gets an email from this woman, and she says, My name's Courtney, and I'm married to the guy that Helen Garner met at the station. And I'm sending you here's a photo of me and the baby and him. Sitka is the guy's name. And we just want you to know how thrilled we are that we were in the magazine. And could you pass this on to Helen? So they passed it on to me, and I burst into floods of tears. And then I sent them an email back. And after a while, we emailed back and forth a few times, and then she says, oh, do you want to meet and go up to Brunswick and have a coffee sometime? So we go to the Turkish cafe up there. She's Australian and he's Turkish. So we meet, and I don't know, we just hit it off, and now we've become really good friends. And now they've got another baby, which was not born in the ambulance. And
I'm going to come train riding with you. Helen, do you mind just reading that part of the story? I think that would be exquisite to hear the way you kind of just told the story and then the way it kind of got written.
Okay. Well, so I'm this is the end part of the story after my friend and I had been talking about the big demo there was up in that we hadn't gone to.
And you missed the demo, didn't you?
Well, I tried to go, but I went the wrong day.
How can you miss the demo?
Well, anyway, I thought it was Sunday and it was really Saturday or something. Anyway.
You were such a radical in your day too.
So then we're talking sadly about it. So then the whole scene changes. There's an asterisk in the middle of the page and I changed gear. We gave up on the bar with its thundering men and parted on Burke Street. On the platform at Parliament Station, I read while I waited. A man sat down beside me. I glanced up. He was in his 30s, dark-jawed, emitting a faint whiff of alcohol. Holding out his iPhone in cupped hands, he shuffled his bum along the bench till our sides touched. I leaned away. "Excuse me," he said. His face was shining. "I hope you don't mind. I've come from the hospital. My wife's just had our first child a few hours ago. Can I share it with you?" She'd rung him at work. "Come home, quick." She was going into labour. He jumped into the car and floored it from Glenroy to Broadmeadows. He was nearly home when a paramedic called. The ambulance was stationary on the corner of Camp Road and the highway. She was about to give birth. He burst into the back of the ambulance just in time to see the baby crowning. It was a girl. Her name was Poppy. He thrust the phone into my hand and we bowed our heads over the screen. There she was in the hospital with her white-toothed mother, a stunned scrap of creamy brown in a jaunty cotton cap. I had to pull out my hanky. He was wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. We both started laughing. "Thank you for telling me. Thank you for listening." The Craigieburn train slid in. For 3 stations, heading out of the city, we hunched over his phone and talked wildly about parents and children and migration and marriage and work and houses. When the train reached my stop, we shook hands and kissed each other on both cheeks. I stepped out into the spring dusk and away he went, a stranger whose life had just been blown wide open, going to look for his car where he'd left it on the side of the road, way out north in Broadie.
Helen Garner.
Thank you.